Hello, Reporter Room investigators. Today we're going to be talking about the Lori Vallow case. Let me pull this up for you. Oh my gosh. Is Melanie under investigation? We're going to be talking.
Mr. Boudreaux, you and I met.
We're going to be talking about Brandon Boudreaux and the Lori Vallow Daybell case. So come on in, tell me where you are from. And we're going to be talking about the mysterious passing of Lori Vallow Daybell's third husband, Joe Ryan. Was Joe Ryan Lori Vallow Daybell's first victim? Is Melanie Boudreaux Pawlowski, is she a co-conspirator? We're going to about Zulema, who married Lori's brother, Alex Cox. Is Zulema another victim, or is her involvement more sinister than we thought? My name is Jessica Della Davies. I'm an investigative journalist, and my job is to investigate crimes, crime scenes, and potential suspects and share with you how to do the same thing. If you have not subscribed to Reporter Room, please do. It's free and it helps me out a lot. Like, share, leave a comment, and know that everything I'm sharing with you is my opinion, and opinions are not facts. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So come on in, tell me where you are from. So we're going to be talking about the mysterious passing of Lori Vallow Daybell's third husband, Joe Ryan. Was Joe Ryan actually the first victim, and is Lori Vallow Daybell a Black widow? And we're going to be talking about Melanie Boudreaux Pawlowski. What did she know about Brandon Boudreaux, and when did she know it? So just a quick overview. Brandon Boudreaux said that his ex-wife, Melanie Boudreaux Pawlowski, aspired to be like her Aunt Lori, and the two of them had begun attending religious meetings together back in 2018. And soon Melanie was arguing that they should stockpile food for the end of the world. And then in October of 2019, one of the neighbors saw a Jeep outside Brandon Boudreaux's home. He had separated from Melanie, and it's really scary because they had a family, they had little ones, but somebody took a shot at Brandon. They missed him and they shattered his window. He called law enforcement and they asked who could have done this, and he immediately named Lori and her brother Alex Cox. He also recognized that the Jeep as a vehicle that Lori had. Apparently, Charles Vallow had purchased it, and Tylee Ryan, who was Joe Ryan's daughter and Lori Vallow's daughter, and was one of the little ones that were done away with. But Lori is an attorney, but she did choose to defend herself at both trials in Arizona. She was found guilty of conspiracy to do away with Brandon Boudreaux. Now, Brandon's wife was the only person, or one of the few people, that Brandon had actually given his new address from. He and Melanie had recently separated. He had been living in the family home while it was up for sale. And once they got a contract on it, he moved and got his own place. And he had told Melanie his address, but not very many other people knew where Brandon lived. So how did this shooter know to go to Brandon's house to do this? Now, Trina Kay, who's the prosecutor, asked very precise questions regarding Melanie, being one of only a handful of people who knew where Brandon lived, and she was the only one who knew that knew both Lori and Alex. And Lori has been convicted of this conspiracy. So remember, Melanie had gone on Brandon's phone and blocked Charles Vallow. Plus, she heard a recorded call saying she didn't want Brandon to know that Lori's brother, Alex Cox, had passed away, because she enjoyed the idea that Brandon was still afraid and living in fear of Alex Cox. So Melanie doesn't sound like a very kind and caring person, in my opinion. And this man, Brandon Boudreaux, he's the father of her children. You would think that alone would make you feel some compassion. But of the three, Melanie, Lori, and Alex, Melanie had the strongest motive to do away with Brandon, and she hasn't been charged yet. She's the only beneficiary of Brandon's life insurance. And we know that Lori and Chad Daybell, that Lori's brother took out multiple people. And I believe that a lot of this, was for life insurance, including Tammy Daybell and Charles Vallow. Tammy Daybell was Chad Daybell's wife, and Charles Vallow was Lori Vallow Daybell's husband prior to her marrying Chad Daybell. That was her husband number 4. Chad Daybell is husband number 5. We're going to talk about husband number 3. The prosecutors pointed out that only Melanie knew that Brandon's new address. He had recently moved and had not given his address out to hardly anyone. The prosecutor pointed out that Melanie knew that Brandon was going to be returning home. Remember, she had just met him in the park to do an exchange of their child. And I think Melanie was expecting Brandon to drive straight back to the house, and maybe that delay caught Alex Cox off guard. That delay may have saved Brandon's life, because maybe Alex was poised, and then after an hour went by when Brandon didn't come home because he went to the gym, maybe Alex kind of relaxed, and that may have saved Brandon's life. So when Brandon did return back to the house, as he was getting ready to turn into his driveway, Alex took a shot at him. So we're going to talk about the mysterious passing of Lori Vallow Daybell's third husband, Joe Ryan. Before we do, I just wanted to just share really quickly why I think why I do think that Melanie may be prosecuted. Let me forward this to 9:20. Just going to play a little snippet under fair use. My source on this is the East Idaho News.
They're going to want to do that, and certainly not in this particular case.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about Arizona, this past trial, is several references to Melanie Pawlowski. Trina Kay said she's under investigation. She is a co-conspirator. Stuff we had not heard publicly before.
And I just want to make it clear, this is the special prosecutor. Okay, this is the special prosecutor that he is interviewing. And this, again, my sourcing, I'm using this under fair use, is the East Idaho News.
Everybody wants to know, what does that mean?
Well, Trina Kay was being very honest with the court and the defendant that technically, as long as the statute of limitations, the time you have to bring the charges, hasn't expired, an investigation or charges could come. For the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in Arizona, that statute of limitations is unending. It goes on for life.
So if I were Melanie, I would be very concerned for myself right now.
So in theory, if new evidence comes forward, Melanie Boudreaux Pawlowski could be charged 20 years from now. So Trina was being honest with the court and explaining, like, it's still open. Candidly, it's always going to be open. But realistically, I have never seen a person in a conspiracy charged years later. It's just, it would be highly, highly unusual for charges to come down at this time against a member of a conspiracy when the principal has already been charged.
Okay, so sounds like it's possible, but she doesn't sound like she thinks it's going to be likely that Melanie gets charged. So let's talk about, I just wanted to play that little snippet there because I thought that was very, very interesting. So this is husband number 3 for Lori Vallow. His name is Joe Ryan, and he is the father. This is Tylee Ryan. This is Tylee's father. Now, he was found passed away at the age of 59 in his apartment at around 6 p.m. on April the 3rd of 2018. Okay, so let's talk about Joe, because I think that this, what happened, and we're going to talk about Zulema and Alex Cox. Is Zulema just another victim, or is her involvement more sinister, in just a few minutes? But I do want to talk about Joe Ryan. So Joe Ryan, did Lori Vallow do away with Joe Ryan for insurances? So hear me out. So the Phoenix Police Department back on November 8th of 2020 said they were reviewing the case. Now, it doesn't mean that it was reopened for investigation, but the review came after an audio was found of Lori Vallow allegedly saying she wanted to do away with husband number 3, Joe Ryan. Remember, he was found like weeks after he passed away due to natural causes. And again, her brother Alex Cox was also supposedly passed away due to natural causes. We're going to talk about Alex in just a second. But the report revealed that Joe Ryan's neighbor, identified as Roy Zelinga, came out of his apartment with his dog. And Roy noticed that his dog was scratching at Joe Ryan's door before he smelled, a strong odor and saw flies inside of the apartment. And investigators found Joe on his bed in advanced stages of decomp. He had been there for a little while. So get this, 10 days later, police contact Lori Vallow, who's listed on the report as his next of kin. And Lori Vallow tells the police that she's not heard from Joe Ryan in about 2 years. And according to the report, Lori also says that she shared her daughter Tylee, custody with Tylee, with Joe. So this is Tylee Ryan, who was ultimately declared dark and was found buried in Chad Daybell's backyard with her brother JJ. Now, the office of the Maricopa County Medical Examiner determined that Joe's cause of death was from arterial sclerosis, cardiovascular disease. Medical experts say that this can cause a hardening of the arteries, but many people are not buying it and believe that he was actually poisoned. And Lori did have a motive, because guess who had life insurance? Joe Ryan did. Guess who the beneficiary was? Lori Vallow was the beneficiary. So Lori Vallow did away with Tylee and JJ, and they did away with Tammy. With Chad Daybell, she conspired and did away with Chad Daybell's wife. And she did away with Charles Vallow. And for Charles Vallow and Tammy Daybell, we know in both of those cases, there was a motive beyond just being crazy. It was life insurance. So Lori Vallow and Joe Ryan were in a long and heated custody battle over Tylee. And you can see from Joe's point of view why he would have wanted to try to get Tylee away from Lori, because she's weird, right? So Joe had a life insurance policy, and court documents say that Joe accused Lori Vallow of parental alienation and alleged he had not seen Tylee for more than a year at one point. He also referred to a court-appointed psychologist who interviewed Lori Vallow. And it gets even more alarming in light of what we know happened to Tylee, what happened to JJ, what happened to Tammy, what happened to Charles, and also what she attempted to do to Brandon Boudreaux. But in light of what we know happened to Tylee, according to the psychologist, his name was David Poole. He said, quote, Mrs. Vallow is a devout Mormon who has mentioned to me that doing away with Tylee, I'm watching my words here, would be an option before giving Tylee to her father, Joseph Ryan, even for a visit. And he said, quote, these are real and serious concerns. So he was sounding the alarm before Joe passed away about Lori Vallow and her, that Tylee, he thought Tylee was in danger. So even back then, when Lori was threatening to do away with Tylee, and I want to be clear that somebody who's a devout Mormon would never do anything like this. She is an extremist, and in any religion, in every religion, there are people who are extremists. I just want to make that clear. Most people who are Mormon are good, decent, law-abiding people. So I just don't want to impugn an entire group of people because of Lori Vallow Daybell. But she was already threatening to do away with Tylee back then when she's with Joe. And so she was willing to say it to a psychologist. So, and this is, and now, according to Joe's sister, Annie, she is claiming in her blog that Lori was reportedly threatening to do away with Joe. So get this. So back in October 12th of 2018, Charles Vallow reached out to one of his friends, because now he's with Lori, to ask him to help get the payout for Joe Ryan's life insurance. So this is not verified in any paperwork or court testimony. The sourcing on this is Joe's sister, whose name is Annie, and her blog. So Joe passed away in 2018, but before this, Alex Cox, who took the shot at Brandon Boudreaux, and who I believe worked took the shot at Tammy Daybell, and I believe helped bury JJ and Tylee with Chad Daybell in Chad Daybell's backyard. This is Lori's crazy brother, Alex Cox. He went to jail for assaulting Lori's third husband, Joe Ryan, with a stun gun and threatening to do away with Joe Ryan. So the idea that Joe Ryan just simply passed away of natural causes, to me, is a big red flag. Also, Lori Vallow was the only next of kin in the medical examiner's office at the time that Joe passed away. Now, Lori reportedly never turned over any of these calls or even bothered to notify Joe's family that he had passed away. And this sounds so familiar because you will recall when Charles Vallow was done away with by Lori's brother, she told his kids in a text message. She didn't even call them and then refused to answer their questions that they had, like what happened to their dad. She just ignored them, refused to answer them. So I think she's a black widow, and I think she's was doing this for a good long while. And I think Brandon Boudreaux is lucky he's alive. He's lucky his children are alive, because this sounds really similar to what she did with Charles Vallow. The not notifying the family. So on October the 26th of 2018, Lori Vallow got a payout of $64,900 from Joe Ryan's life insurance. So in my opinion, she had two motives. One, she wanted to retain custody of Tylee. Two, there was an insurance payout, and it's worth noting that Lori Vallow then got Social Security benefits paid to her on behalf of Tylee Ryan. So let's go back to Alex Cox when he tried to do away with Joe Ryan, Lori Vallow's third husband. Because I do think this is really, really interesting. Okay, so, and I think the fact that this attempt happened, to me, in my opinion, makes it all the more likely that they came in a second time and were successful. And I don't know, because he did lie there for 2 weeks, but I do think it's possible that he was poisoned. And I also think it's possible that Alex Cox, who said over and over that he was going to have to take the fall for Lori Vallow Daybell and Chad Daybell, what they did, he had told, this is what Zulema testified to, but he thought he was going to have to take the fall for him. And I think it's possible he was poisoned too. And I'm going to talk about Zulema, because I'm not convinced that she's just an innocent bystander in all of this. So let's go back to 2007. So Travis County affidavit obtained by Fox 10 revealed that the arrest warrant for Alex Cox, Lori Vallow's brother, who is now deceased, again, this one also is supposedly of natural causes. Oh, and I want to show you the receipts that Lori was threatening people too. Let me show you this. Okay. So this is Lori Vallow friend testified that she threatened to cut her up and bury the body. So this is what Audrey said. This is her friend Audrey that she testified to. She said that Lori told her that she would cut her up, that she wasn't in a mental place to do it, but would get herself in a place to do it. This is what Audrey said to the East Idaho News. There would be bleach and blood and something about trash bags. She would bury me in a place that nobody would find me. So just in light of the fact that she's so willing to just do away with people, I just don't think it's unlikely to consider the fact that she also did away with Joe. So let's talk about Joe. Okay. So Lori definitely had a motive, and we have this attempt by Alex Cox to do away with Joe, according to Fox 10, in an arrest warrant for Alex Cox. And he actually got arrested for this. So the affidavit stated that Alex Cox shocked with a stun gun Joe Ryan, Lori's third husband, and threatened to do away with him. And in light of what we know Alex tried to do to Brandon Boudreaux and what Alex actually did to Charles Vallow and Tammy Daybell, I think this is alarming. And Alex Cox assaulted Joe Ryan with a stun gun and threatened to red rum him. And Joe Ryan had just finished a supervised visit with Tylee. So Joe Ryan survived this first attempt on his life. He injured his back, he sprained his wrist in a fall, and Alex Cox was sentenced to a paltry 90 days in jail for this. I cannot fathom trying to do away with somebody and then they only get 90 days. And then Joe just happens to be found deceased in his home with his life insurance policy for Lori Vallow. So this happened after Joe and Lori Vallow had exchanged Tylee in a neutral meeting. Sound familiar? Sounds like Melanie and Brandon Boudreaux, right? So this happened right after Alex attacked Joe Ryan, right after Joe and Lori exchanged Tylee in a neutral meeting place in Austin, Texas. So to me, this sounds a lot like the attempt that happened on Brandon Boudreaux. And I do wonder if Melanie, this is, just my opinion, it's alleged. I do wonder if she, and a lot of people have wondered, if she conspired with Lori and with Alex to do away with Brandon. She's the only one that had his address. And she called Chad Daybell dad, and she thought of Lori Vallow as a mother figure. So get this, Alex Cox pleads guilty to second-degree aggravated assault and serves only 3 months in jail for attempted to doing away with Joe Ryan. And it's a shame that they didn't keep him locked up and get a conviction for attempted unaliving because, he went on to continue. He wasn't done. So did Alex Cox actually pass away by natural causes? And is Zulema as innocent as, she's making herself out to be? Let me just talk about Zulema for a second. So get this, Zulema, I'm really suspicious. I feel like Lori and Chad were trying to clean things up. They were wanting to pin everything that they could on Alex. I think he was going to take the fall. And I think it's suspicious that Zulema suddenly married Alex Cox, and 2 weeks after she marries him, he's done away with. So is she just another victim of Lori and Chad, or is there something more sinister to this? We'll talk about this in a second, but I want to talk about Melani Boudreaux and the fact that she was a beneficiary to Brandon's life insurance, and just linking that to Lori Vallow Daybell and Joe Ryan. So I shared with you the special prosecutor in the Idaho case, something interesting during the interview, that Lori's conspiracy conviction will be given to authorities if enough evidence arises to charge Melanie. And I shared with you where she spoke out about this. Melanie was the beneficiary on Brandon's life insurance. And while Lori was defending herself, she cross-examined Brandon and asked him if he had changed the beneficiary of his life insurance policy from Melanie to someone else. And Brandon stated he couldn't change the beneficiary of his life insurance policy from Melani Boudreaux because the signatures would have been required for not just for him, but also for Melanie. So people are wondering, if Melanie had a motive here. So Melanie is the person that connects Lori Vallow Daybell and her deranged brother, Alex Cox, to Brandon Boudreaux. And Melanie is the one who knew where Brandon Boudreaux lived. So therefore, I think it's safe to assume that Melanie did possibly, allegedly, in my opinion, give out Brandon's address to Lori Vallow Daybell and Alex Cox. And since Melanie was the beneficiary of Brandon Boudreaux's life insurance, she benefited the most from doing away with Brandon. And I want to talk about Brandon's and Melanie's children, because I feel like this could have easily gone sideways for them had Brandon not survived. I don't think they would be here if Brandon had not survived. But he must have been absolutely terrified knowing what happened to JJ and Tylee, that they had both been done away with. And he had to have been worried that his children were going to be next. And we have Chad and Lori Daybell playing God, declaring who's light and who's dark, and declaring people are zombies. So Brandon had to be scared of how entrenched Melanie was with all of this, with this group declaring who's light, who's dark, who gets to live and who doesn't. And he had to be worried that his children would be declared dark and be done away with either by Lori, by Alex, or even by Melanie. And I'm not saying Melanie would have done this. I don't know Melanie, but I'm just saying what I think, in my opinion, Brandon would have been really worried about. So the 144,000, and we've come to believe, to learn that a lot of people that were done away with had life insurance policies. So I don't think that this was just related to Doomsday and visions that Chad Daybell had. I think this was an excuse by Lori, who I believe did this before. I think she was a Black widow, and I think she did do away, in my opinion, with Joe Ryan. Now, Lori had come to share Chad Daybell's unhinged beliefs. She had become convinced that she was a deity destined to play a role in, the coming apocalypse, and that her family was getting in the way of her mission. And this is how she got named Doomsday Mom by the mainstream media. But let's take a look at Zulema. Zulema, who we heard testify on this. So Zulema married Alex Cox, right? And so a lot of people have wondered, was Zulema Pastenes, was she, I hope I didn't say her last name wrong, but is she another victim of Lori and Chad? Or is there something more sinister going on? Because it's interesting that Alex Cox suddenly turns up unalived 2 weeks after he marries Zulema. So Zulema befriended Chad Daybell together with Lori, and he assured Zulema that when the rapture came, she was going to be one of the special 144,000 saved and brought to live safely in cities of white tents. And she said, I believed we were doing something good. This is what Zulema testified to help get rid of darkness and get rid of evil spirits off the earth. I believe she believed this. I do. Zulema had befriended Chad and believed she was part of the 144,000 mentioned in the book of Revelations. So it's worth noting that, Melanie called Chad dad, and that she viewed Lori Vallow as a mother figure. And just seeing how enmeshed all of this is together, I do think this is really, really suspicious. And I'm going to go back to Joe Ryan and how he actually passed away in just a second, but I want to talk about Zulema for a second. So I don't think she's as innocent as she pretends to be. In my opinion, this is just my opinion. I'm not saying she did anything to anybody, but I think she knew more. Because on December 4th of 2018, Zulema told Chad Daybell that she started seeing visions and could now control the elements since he gave her a blessing. So in my opinion, Zulema was all in on this 144,000 and that she was special and she was chosen back in December of 2018 when she said this to Chad Daybell. Zulema married Alex Cox just 2 weeks before he passed away. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. But she also told Lori Vallow that she was told by God, this is what Zulema said, that she was to protect Lori Vallow. So remember, we learned that Chad had declared that Alex was the warrior and the protector. So did Chad then say that Zulema was? So Zulema marries Alex Cox just 2 weeks before he passes away. She and her, according to her daughter, Zulema had planned to move to Rexburg, Idaho with Lori Vallow, Melanie Boudreaux, now Melanie Pawlowski, and Alex Cox. And this is where Chad Daybell lived with his wife, Tammy Daybell. So Zulema marries Alex Cox just 2 weeks before he passed away, supposedly of natural circumstances. But this is interesting. He took her last name. Alex took her last name. And get this. This is really interesting. We're going to go back to Joe Ryan in just a second. But Zulema's adult son, Joseph Lopez, found Alex Cox unresponsive in the bathroom. Okay, so he's the one that found Alex. And her son didn't even know Alex's last name. And he also referred to Alex Cox as Zulena's boyfriend, his mother's boyfriend, not her husband. So I think it's significant that Zulema did not tell her own son that she was married to Alex. And it makes me wonder why. Why not tell her son that she was married to Alex? Why not, introduce her son to her husband? All right, so let's go back to Joe Ryan. So did Lori Vallow do away with her third husband, Joe Ryan? He passed away, and this was after Alex Cox tried to do away with him. So did he really pass away by natural causes? Or is there something more nefarious going on? Let me check in with chat. If you guys think that he passed away from natural causes, put a 1 in the chat. If you think he passed away and had some help, put a 2 in the chat. And I just want to say thank you to NJAZ for gifting a reporter room membership. That is so nice of you. If you receive that, please make sure and thank NJAZ. And I just want to say thank you. And NJAZ gifted another reporter room membership. So if you're watching, come on up and talk to me. You might get a reporter room membership. Okay, so let's talk about Alex Cox. And did Alex Cox really pass away from natural causes? Did Joe Ryan pass away from natural causes? So let's talk about Alex Cox first. So he passed away on December 12th in 2019 in Zulema's house in Gilbert, Arizona. According to the ME and medical examiner, it was all natural. I'm just very suspicious of this. I'm not saying she did anything. I'm just suspicious. But Zulema was involved in casting. Zulema was involved with Lori Vallow Daybell and Chad Daybell. In my opinion, she was into this up to her eyeballs. I think she got an immunity deal to testify, and they probably had to do that to get her to testify. But why did she marry Alex Cox? And Alex said that he was worried, this is according to Zulema, that Lori and Chad were trying to pin everything on him, and he was concerned for himself. And you will recall that Alex was told that he was a warrior and that his job, this is what Chad told him, was to protect Lori Vallow, his sister. So if they all wanted to cover up their tracks, and I'm talking about Lori and Chad, all they had to do was tell one of the members of this group, the chosen selected, that Alex had turned dark. So the question is, was Alex declared dark and then done away with using poison? Or was this truly a natural cause? So I want to go to Annie's blog. Oh, it might not let me show her blog. This is Joe Ryan's sister. Yeah, it's not going to let me show the blog. That's okay. So Joe Ryan's sister is also very, very suspicious of this whole thing. But I want to just be clear that I also think that if the KK and her husband had not, asked for a welfare check on JJ, just in light of everything and the way that it was happening, and if Brandon had been done away with, if that had been successful, if Alex Cox had been successful, I think that it's very possible that Brandon's children might not be here either. And, he's been trying to sound the alarm about Melanie, and I hope, people listen, because it seems like people were trying to sound the alarm about Alex Cox and Lori Daybell with the psychologist. But let's talk about, I think Lori did have a motive. Her motive included this long heated custody battle over Tylee that started in Travis County, Texas. This motive also included life insurance that benefited Lori Vallow Daybell. And he wanted to have custody of Tylee. He had a psychologist that said that, Lori was already talking about she would rather for Tylee not to be on this earth, I'm watching my words here, than to let Joe see Tylee. And so I think that's already extremely alarming. And that's according to David Poole. What do you guys think about this? Let me check in with chat. Ooh, see what you guys think about this. Yeah, Annie is. Thank you so much. Annie is awesome. Thank you to our mods, NJAZ, Six Sense Amelia, and Brother Mike. Let me see who's all here today. Mrs. Booklover says, it was working great for Lori. Husband's passed away. I'm watching my words. Lori gets to be in charge of all the benefits and the inheritance. Why not do it for Melanie too? Yeah, exactly. And Sue's Glass is also wondering about Melanie mom. Christy says, hi, Heather. Thank you so much for being here. I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much, Amelia. Nicole says, hi to all who jumped in recently. Moonlight says, Lord, she never seemed to be in love with Alex. It was really weird that Alex passes away just 2 weeks after he marries Zulema. So Annie put 2, Nicole put 2, Marianne put 2, Grandma put 2, Peggy put 2, Susan said 2, Kathleen said 2, Amelia said 2, Moonlight says 2, Christine says 2, English Rose says 2. So a lot of 2s. I don't see anyone. Sarah put a 2, Mrs. Book Lover put a 2, Dabs put a 2. And just as if you'd like to become a channel member, if you want to become a channel member, it's the button next to the subscribe button. Subscribing is free, and being a channel member just costs a little bit. Amelia says, Zulema's massage on a plastic sheet statement was just bizarre. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that Zulema has said that is bizarre. And I know they needed her testimony. I get it. But man, Warren said, Lori is pure evil, and she knows not how precious a human life is or how we cherish our families and loved ones. A pathetically deranged nobody who tried to take control in court, but failed a demon. Yeah. She's as evil as they come. And Chad is too. Susan wants to know, was there any? No. Let me see what I can find out. That's a great question. Let's see. It just says natural causes. So this is, make sure we're all looking at the same thing. So it just says he passed away of natural causes. There was no criminality associated. Now remember, this is before Lori even married Charles Vallow. This is before Charles Vallow turned up, mysteriously done away with. This is before Alex Cox was mysteriously done away, or was passed away. Don't know if he was done away with or not. This is before the shot was taken at Brandon Boudreaux. That I think Melanie and Lori and Alex, we know Lori got convicted, but a lot of people think Melanie was in cahoots on this too. But this is according to Law and Crime. Sergeant Mercedes Fortune told Law and Crime that there was nothing to lead investigators to believe it could be foul play. And it was first reported by the East Idaho News. It was determined to be a cardiac issue. But it's straightforward development linked to a convoluted case. Lori Vallow and her 5th husband and current husband, Chad Daybell, are charged in Idaho. They've now been found guilty of doing away with JJ and Tylee, and they were found on Chad Daybell's property. They've both been convicted. And it's also before Lori's brother, Alex, was had shot Charles Vallow. So he had done, he shot Charles. I don't think it's that hard to believe that he could have. And Tammy Daybell was also supposedly natural causes initially, right? Till they exhumed her. They exhumed Tammy Daybell, and that was also determined to be natural causes. And it was found out that it wasn't natural causes. So was Joe Ryan natural causes? I'm not convinced that it was. I mean, Alex Cox had pled guilty to aggravated assault in 2008 after he tased Joe Ryan and threatened to do away with him. So I just think it's very, very interesting. All of these people, I think this was the first victim. I do. Says the FBI is now investigating the passing of Lori Vallow's 3rd husband, Joe Ryan. So this is back in 2020. But it's very interesting to look at this now in 2025 and look at this through what we know today versus what they knew back then. So they looked into Lori Vallow's 3rd husband, Joseph Ryan, in their investigation into her. He was found deceased in his apartment in 2018 and was classified as a heart attack 14 years after his marriage to Lori Vallow had ended. And they said, we are aware of Mr. Ryan's passing with a D. It's become part of the investigation into Lori Vallow. So they did look at this. In an interview with Court TV, Ryan's sister, Annie Cushing, this is who I'm sourcing for a lot of this, told Ashley Banfield that an FBI interviewed her for 3 hours about the relationship between Lori Vallow and her brother, Joe Ryan, and the circumstances regarding his passing away. All right, we're going to dive into this next. I just want to make sure, let me pull this up. Let me take this down. Okay, we're going to dive into this next. Let me just really quickly, I do want to we're not done because we still have to go through this news clip, but I do want to say thank you to our producers, NJazz, Sasha Angel, George Brown Pepper, and Christy Valentine. And also thank you to all of our channel members. If you would like to be a channel member, it's subscribing is free and channel membership is right next to the subscribe button. So get this. I want to talk a little bit about Audrey too, just touch on Audrey. So Lori did threaten Audrey in this, and I just wonder if Audrey was, was in the line of people that were going to be done away with also, not just Brandon Boudreaux, not just Tammy Daybell. And remember, her passing was also declared natural causes. And I want to say super thanks and coffee gratitude from our last live stream to Brother Mike, NJazz, Donna Bravo, Leslie, and gifted channel memberships, NJazz, Vicky, Patricia Warner, and NJazz. And I also want to say super thanks to Leslie, Keep It Real, and Kat. Okay, so thank you so much, all of you. All right, so this is, let's deep dive into this next. My sourcing on this is Court TV. Let me know if you guys can hear it.
The husband before that, who was shot and killed by her brother. Let's talk about another.
Can you guys hear that okay? Just a quick yes or no. Can you guys hear? Is the sound okay? Yeah, the similarities are too much of a coincidence not to be suspicious. Can you guys hear it okay? Just a quick yes or no. Yes? Okay. Thank you, Annie. Thank you, NJazz. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Nicole. Okay, much appreciated. I just didn't want to play it and then find out, oh, they couldn't hear any of it.
Another one of her husbands, Joseph Ryan, who is also, unfortunately, no longer with us. You've been digging into that, Ashley. What have you found out here tonight?
Lots more interesting stuff. So to be clear, I wish we had a flow chart because this is so complicated, but let's just say husband number 3 for Lori Vallow. That's Joseph Anthony Ryan. He died on April 3rd of 2018. He has a sister who is very distressed about the circumstances, all of these circumstances of this story, and also about her brother's death, and fairly so as well. This is a picture of Annie Cushing and her brother, Joseph Ryan. They vacationed together.
And I used Annie's blog for some of the sourcing on this.
They got along really well. She got along really well with Lori Vallow. And she said that this man was a good dad to Tylee and also adopted Colby. And that, look at that picture of Annie. That is Annie Cushing sitting with Lori Vallow. Lori Vallow has her hand on her tummy because she's pregnant with Tylee in that picture. And she said she was tender-hearted, fun-loving, beautiful woman who defined joie de vivre. And she's desperately hoping that Lori finds that again and talks about where the children are. What's amazing, though.
So this was, just to be clear, this was before they knew that JJ and Tylee were buried in Chad's backyard.
Is that she just can't seem to get her hands around who this woman has become. But there they are in better times on vacation together. And there's even more as well with regard to her brother and how he got together, Vinny, with Lori.
I understand that you got some more photos. You have wedding, another Lori Vallow wedding photos, because we've seen the ones from Hawaii with Chad Daybell, And oh, look
Well,
at that.
Hawaii is a favorite. Yeah, go figure, huh? Yes, it is. It's confirmed. That is Kauai. Lori decided that she'd be married to Joseph Ryan in Kauai as well.
That's where she ran off to get married to Chad Daybell too. So I just think there's a pattern here, you guys.
Her current fifth husband is Chad Daybell, and they got married in Kauai. And her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, they got married in Vegas, but they moved to Kauai and had a business there and had the kids there. So I guess Kauai is a pretty special place, and got even more special at husband 5 because there are the fancy dancing pictures of Chad and Lori with the wedding rings they bought 17 days before Chad's wife died.
Yeah, that is so damaging, in my opinion. For Chad Daybell, and one of the reasons he got convicted is that those wedding rings were purchased before Tammy was done away with. And remember, Tammy was declared natural charges, just like Joe Ryan.
Mysteriously. So yeah, there's that whole Kauai connection. But Joseph Ryan and Lori were married. I was just gonna say from 2001 to 2004. And what's again, there's some significance there because the Hawaii connection is not the only thing, but don't forget he also adopted Lori's son from another husband, Colby. So go ahead.
Right, and Colby takes his name, so he becomes Colby Ryan. And what was his relationship like with the children? Because I think that's an important part of this whole thing, because this story starts because we're looking for Tylee, so everything comes back to her and the kids.
Yeah, if Tylee and JJ wouldn't have disappeared, I don't know if Tammy Daybell probably. I think that Lori would still be married to Chad. I think Tammy Daybell's passing away would have still been declared natural causes. I don't think they would have exhumed her and looked into all that. Charles Vallow, Alex had already gotten away with that one, even though he tried to do away with Joe Ryan in a different state. So I do think that it's really, really interesting on that. So let's continue on.
He's involved here, but what was his relationship like with Tylee and with Colby?
So really interesting news that we found today on that one. It's complicated, as everything in the story is, Vinny. But on Dateline, if you watched on Friday night, there's a big story about Joseph Ryan. Here he is in better times before he died. An allegation that was made against him by that son he adopted, Colby.
And I'm not even going to air this because I think that a lot of this was done maliciously to dirty up Joe. I don't know for sure. I don't want to take anything away from Colby, but I feel like Joe's loved ones have been through enough, and I just don't believe it that Lori has any credibility at this point to be making accusations against anybody. We saw what she was trying to do to Brandon Boudreaux on her cross-examination of him. She tried to cross-examine him. Let me pull that up. And she was trying to dirty him up. So to me, she's very willing to dirty up other people. She's not a nice person. And if she can dirty up Brandon, she will dirty up Brandon. Oh my gosh, there's so many videos because she was found guilty. I'm just going to leave it. I'm not sure on this sourcing if I can do it, but I don't want to dirty up this. Amelia says, Joe's sister Annie is adamant that there was foul play involved. Yeah. And I mean, I think she deserves to have this looked into. Yeah. I'm not going to show it. I'm not going to show it because I just don't think Lori has any credibility at this point. She could have, told her son this and said, this is why she left. And as a child, he would have believed it. She is evil. You're right. Thank you so much for being here. I'm grateful for all of you guys being here. And Peggy says, my nails are getting in the way. So I do think that it is really, really interesting that what happened to Brandon Boudreaux and what happened to Joe Ryan. And, and how similar it is to what they try, that it was custody, that they, both had life insurance policies that benefited somebody that was, in this Doomsday group. I just do think it's very, very suspicious. And I believe Joe's sister, Annie. I think she is trying to sound the alarm, and has been for years, trying to get justice for her brother. And, Lori Vallow benefited from his life insurance. And if she's the one that did it, she certainly should not have done it. And I just, thank goodness that Lori was convicted for trying to do away with Brandon, because maybe now they can start looking into Melani Boudreaux. I do think that, for Brandon's, sake, he deserves to have justice. He shouldn't have to, live in fear of of these people. So I think I'm going to leave it there. If you have not subscribed to Reporter Room, please subscribe and give this a thumbs up if you would like for me, and drop me a comment below too. If you want me to continue covering this case, I will continue to deep dive it. I would love to look into the other Melanie Gibb. And I would love to look more into some of the other people that were in this, this chosen 144,000 that I, may have gotten an immunity deal, but maybe deserve to have a little bit more of a deep dive into what actually happened. Thank you so much. If you are modding, please come down and drop me a comment really quick. I would love to just be able to shout you out. I want to thank Njaz for modding, and Kathleen and Amelia. Our head mods are Njaz and Amelia and Brother Mike. Let me see. Dabs is modding. Christy Ballantyne is modding. Thank you so much. If you're modding, come drop me a comment really quick so I can see that you're here. Thank you so much, Dabs. Thank you, Kathleen. Moonlight's like, yes, let's dig. Thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you. If you want me to continue to deep dive this, I will. I was watching the trial. Thank you, Christy, so much. Thank you to all of our mods. Thank you, Christy. She says, thank you, Jessica. Mods, thank you for joining us today. And Susan, thank you so much for modding. Really appreciate all of you guys modding today. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming by to spend a little bit of time with me. If you want me to continue to cover this case, I will continue to deep dive and dig. I feel like there's a lot to dig into. I would love to continue to follow what's going to happen next to Melanie Boudreaux Pawlowski. I am going to be curious to see if she gets indicted or not. I certainly feel like maybe they could. I just feel like it needs to be looked into. She either needs to be cleared or not cleared. And right now there's a big cloud hanging over her, in my opinion, because she is the only one that knew his address, and she was the beneficiary of Brandon's life insurance. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.